Hello class, Miss Emami here. We are going to have another lesson for our trig unit, and in today's lesson we are going to learn how we can use primary trig ratios, sine, cosine, tangent, or SOHCAHTOA, to find unknown angles. If we have a triangle that there is an angle that we are trying to find out, how we can use SOHCAHTOA to do that. So let's first start by reviewing our SOHCAHTOA. Now, if we have a right triangle, one where one angle is 90 degrees, we talked about the fact that we can label the sides with respect to a given angle. So in this example, for example, angle A is given, so the largest side opposite the right angle is either always hypotenuse, or we call it H. Then the side opposite the angle is the opposite side, and then side next door to the angle is adjacent, or A. And we talked about how in a right triangle mathematicians figured out that the ratios of these sides to each other is always the same value, which is tabulated and programmed into your computer calculators as well. And each one of these ratios has its own name. So we have sine of the angle, which is opposite over hypotenuse. We have cosine of the angle, which is adjacent over hypotenuse. And we have tangent of the angle, which is opposite over adjacent. And in order for us to remember those better, we use these abbreviation of SOHCAHTOA. In the last lesson, we learned how to use SOHCAHTOA to find unknown sides. In this lesson, we are going to learn how SOHCAHTOA can be used if some angles are not known in a right triangle. So, first step, label the sides with respect to the unknown angle. So, whatever angle you are going to try to find out, put a dot there and label with respect to that. Then figure out which sides are given to you, and based on the sides given, decide which one of the ratios will work for you, and then you set up your ratio and find the angle using your calculator. This is a very, very important step, that when you want to find the angle, you will use the inverse key on your calculator. And I am going to show you what I mean by this, but this is a very important fact to remember, that when you're trying to find an angle, you won't use the sine, cosine, and tangent. You will use the inverse of those keys on your calculator. So let's start with an example and see what it means. So the question has given you a right triangle, and it's asking you to find angle B. So this is the unknown angle. So I am going to put a dot here, and then first step is to label the sides. So this is the right angle. So the opposite of right angle is always hypotenuse. With respect to angle B, this will be the opposite side, and this is next to the angle, so this is the adjacent. Now, the sides that are provided for you are opposite and adjacent. O and A are given in the question. I'm going to write our SOHCAHTOA here. SOHCAHTOA. So opposite and adjacent, that means we are going to use tangent. Now, this time we don't have the angle, so we write tangent of B. You cannot just write tangent by itself. Tangent of the angle you are trying to find is opposite over adjacent. 12. Now you substitute with the value. So tangent B equals, opposite is 6 and adjacent is 50. Now at this point you are ready to find the angle. So using your calculator, angle B equals, and this is what I talked about. Instead of using the tangent, you will use the inverse tangent, which looks like tan with a -1 here, 6 over 50. Now, you see how we have sine, cosine, and tan that we use when we did questions before where the angle was known. Now that we are trying to find the angles, we have to use these ones here, the inverse ones. In my calculator, I have to press the second function and then press this. In your calculator, there may be a different way of doing it. Please let me know if you need help with that. But what I'm going to do is I am going to do second function tan. So this is inverse tan. I open the bracket, 6 divided by 15, close the bracket, equals 21.8, and because it is an angle, I have to use degree symbol, and because I have rounded, is approximately equal to. So when you are finding an angle, you have to use the inverse key on your calculator. Now let's move to one more question. We have triangle DEF here, and we want to find side angle F. So I'm going to put a dot here, and first step is to label. So opposite the right angle is always hypotenuse. Opposite this angle will be the opposite side. Next to it will be adjacent. So I'm going to write my SOHCAHTOA here. Now we are trying to find angle F. We have this side given to us, which is the hypotenuse, and this side, which is opposite. So opposite and hypotenuse talks, that means we have to use sine. So sine, which angle we are trying to find? F, equals opposite over hypotenuse. So sine F equals, we substitute values, 4 over 8. And because we are trying to find an angle, I'm sure you remember I told you we have to use the inverse function on your calculator. So inverse sine 4 over 8. So inverse sine 4 divided by 8, 30 degrees. So angle F, and this is exact, is 30 degrees. Okay, let's do one more example. By the way, this is find unknown angles. My bad, sorry. So I'm going to write here SOHCAHTOA. So we are trying to find angle F, again, sorry, this is the right angle. So we label opposite the right angle is hypotenuse, opposite angle F is opposite, and next to it is adjacent. Now, the ones that is given to us in this example is, we know the adjacent, we know the hypotenuse. So adjacent and hypotenuse means we are going to use cosine. So I'm going to set up the ratio. Cosine angle F, that's one we want trying to find, is adjacent over hypotenuse. Cosine F is 9/12. Again, we are trying to find an angle, so we have to use the inverse key. Cosine inverse 9/12. So inverse cosine 9 divided by 12. 41.41. So angle F is approximately 41.41 degrees. Now you have to be ready that sometimes the question is not going to give you the triangle with a shape. It's just going to give you some information, and you have to actually draw it on your own, and then solve the problem using the methods that we just talked about. So we know that here in this question, the triangle is called triangle DF. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just draw a right triangle. But I'm not going to rush. I'm going to wait to see what is more given to me. So it already says angle F is 90 degrees. And this is the right angle. So I know this is going to be angle F. And then it says we have two other sides, D and E. So I'm going to call this D and E, D, E, F. Now, this question is using little letters to represent the sides. So let's figure out. This is angle F. So this is going to be side F. Angle D, so this is going to be side D, and angle E, so this is going to be side E. Now we know side F is 150, so this is 150 centimeter, and side D is 120, so this is 120 centimeter. And what we want to find is angle D. So all the work we've done so far was simply to get us to where we were in the previous questions, where the information was given us with a shape. We had, in this example, we had to create the shape first before we could do the question. So we want to find angle D. So I'm going to put a dot here. So this is going to be the opposite. This is going to be the adjacent, and this is going to be the hypotenuse. Now, we have 120, which is the opposite. We have 150, which is the hypotenuse. O and H, if we look back into our SOHCAHTOA, O and H means we have to use sine. So sine, the angle we're trying to find out is angle D, is equal to O over H. We write again, and this time we substitute. So O is 120, H is 150. Now we're trying to find an angle, so we have to use the inverse key on the calculator. So inverse sine 120, inverse sine 120 divided by 150, 53.13. So angle D is approximately 53.13 degrees. For the last example of the lesson, sometimes you are going to be asked to solve a triangle. What it means if they ask you to solve a triangle is that you have to find all the angles and all the sides. So whatever is not known, you have to find it. And that's what it means by solving a triangle. So let's look at the example and see how we can do this. Okay, so this is triangle ABC and it is a right triangle. So we only know this side, but there are two sides that we need to find and there is one angle that we need to find. Now, we start by finding angle B because I'm sure you remember from previous grade that sum of angles in a triangle is 180 degrees. Sum of angles in a triangle equals 180. So that means we already know this is 60, we already know this is 90, so we can find the other one. So I'm going to write angle B will be 180 minus 90 minus 60. Because the 3 will add up to 180, that means angle B is 30 degrees. So we already have one of the unknown measures in this angle. So we know this. We still have two sides to find. So I'm going to label with respect to the angle that I have, which is angle A. So this is going to be opposite, this is going to be adjacent, and this is going to be hypotenuse. So I start by finding one of the unknowns. Doesn't matter which one. Let's say I want to start by finding this side, so I call this X. I have adjacent and I want adjacent and I want opposite. O and A, if you remember from our SOHCAHTOA. So O and A means tangent. So I'm going to set that up. Tangent 60 degrees equals opposite over adjacent. Tangent 60 degrees equals opposite is 12. Adjacent is what we're trying to find, X. Now we put this over 1 and we cross multiply. So X times tangent 60 equals 12 times 1. And in order to solve this, you need to isolate X, so you need to divide both sides by tangent 60. X is equal to 12 times 1 divided by tangent 60. 6.93. And everything here is in centimeters, so this will be in centimeter too. So you have one of the unknown sides. We still have another unknown side to find. Let's say I call this unknown side y. Please don't use the same letter as for unknown. So I'm going to do the work here. We have opposite and we are trying to find the hypotenuse. Opposite and hypotenuse means this time we have to use sine. So we are going to set up the ratio. Sine 60 degrees equals opposite, which is 12, over hypotenuse, which is y. So this is opposite over hypotenuse. I didn't write the formula. Now, again, we put this over 1 and we cross multiply. So y times sine 60 degrees equals 12 times 1, cross multiply. We want to isolate y with the unknown, so divide both sides by sine 60. So y is equal to 12 times 1 divided by sine 60, which is 13.86 when we round. 13.86 centimeters. And now we have solved our triangle because all the unknown measures are found. We had two unknown sides that we found, x and y we call them, and we had one unknown angle that we found. Enjoy the rest of your day until we have another lesson. Goodbye.